You've been faithful. You've been consistent. You've been praying, serving, showing up. And yet, while others seem to be celebrated, promoted, given platforms and opportunities, you remain in the background, unseen, unmentioned, quietly going about what God has given you to do. And if you're honest, part of you wonders if you've been overlooked. If maybe God sees you the way the world does, as less significant, less chosen, less worthy of attention. But what if the very thing that feels like being passed over is actually the sign that God has chosen you for something that requires a different kind of preparation? What if being chosen quietly isn't about being hidden from blessing, but about being protected from the kind of attention that would hollow you out before you're ready to carry what God intends? This isn't about waiting for your turn. It's about understanding that when God chooses a woman quietly, He's not withholding recognition, He's withholding distraction. And there's a reason for that. If you've ever felt spiritually invisible while watching others rise, drop a comment and just say, "Quietly chosen." Because what's happening in you right now might be the most significant thing God is doing in your life, even if no one else knows about it yet. The problem is that we've been trained to believe that God's favor looks like visibility. That being chosen means being seen. That if God really valued you, He would elevate you in ways that others could witness. We scroll through testimonies of women who got the promotion, the platform, the ministry opportunity, the breakthrough that everyone celebrates, and we measure our own spiritual significance against their public moments. And when our lives don't look like that, when we're still in the same place doing the same things with no spotlight and no applause, we assume something is wrong. We assume we're not chosen. Or worse, that we were chosen but somehow disqualified ourselves. So we start performing. We start trying to make ourselves more visible to God, as if He's overlooking us by accident. We add more to our prayers, more to our service, more hustle to our faith, thinking that if we just do enough, maybe He'll finally notice us the way He seems to notice everyone else. But here's the trap. That belief quietly shifts your identity from being God's daughter to being God's candidate. You stop resting in who you already are to Him, and you start campaigning for a position you think you have to earn. And the more you do that, the more exhausting your faith becomes, because you're no longer walking in calling, you're auditing for approval. What's actually happening is that God is doing something in private that wouldn't survive in public yet. When God chooses a woman quietly, He's not putting her on hold, He's putting her in a greenhouse. He's creating conditions where her roots can go deep without the pressure of performance, where her identity can form in Him rather than in how people respond to her. Because here's what we don't talk about enough. Public favor without private formation is spiritually dangerous. When you're given a platform before your identity is anchored, every comment becomes a compass. Every criticism shakes you. Every bit of praise inflates you. You start living in reaction to how people see you, and without realizing it, you become dependent on their validation to feel close to God. That's not freedom. That's not calling. That's anxiety dressed up as ministry. And God loves you too much to set you up for that. So He keeps you quiet. Not because you're not ready for the work, but because the work isn't the point yet, you are. He's not forming a performer. He's forming a woman who knows who she is when no one's watching, when no one's applauding, when there's no external reward. Because that's the only kind of person who can carry real influence without it destroying her. Think about Mary, the mother of Jesus. The angel came to her privately. No witnesses, no crowd, no public announcement that she had been chosen for the most significant role a human being could ever carry. She didn't get a platform, she got a promise. And everything that followed happened quietly for years. She raised the Son of God in obscurity. She wasn't leading Bible studies about it. She wasn't sharing her testimony on a stage. She was chosen for the most important assignment in human history, and almost no one knew. Because God wasn't building her for recognition. He was building her for strength that only comes when you have to trust Him without any external validation that you're on the right path. So here's the practical shift. Stop interpreting silence as rejection. God's silence in your life right now isn't a sign that He's forgotten you. It's a sign that He's protecting you from the kind of attention that would deform you before you're ready. And that means you have to stop performing for an audience that isn't even present. Stop adding more activity to your faith because you think God will finally see you if you do enough. He already sees you. He's already chosen you. The question is whether you can believe that when there's no evidence the world would recognize. Start practicing identity without applause. That means doing what God has given you to do, even when no one notices. Serving where you are without needing it to lead somewhere visible. Praying without needing the answer to be public. Growing without needing to announce the progress. This isn't about being humble in a performative way. It's about being so secure in God's view of you that you don't need anyone else's. And that kind of security doesn't come from a sermon. It doesn't come from a breakthrough moment. It comes from the 100 quiet days where you chose to trust God's assessment of you over the world's silence about you. You also need to stop comparing your private season to someone else's public one. You have no idea what they walked through to get there. You have no idea what they're walking through now. And more importantly, their calling isn't yours. God isn't writing your story to look like anyone else's. He's writing it to form you into the specific woman He needs you to be for the specific assignment He has for you. And if that assignment requires depth, it's going to require darkness first. Not as punishment, as preparation. The pressure you feel right now to be seen, to be recognized, to have something to show for your faithfulness, that's not coming from God. That's coming from a culture that has taught you that your value is tied to visibility. But God's economy doesn't work that way. In His kingdom, the greatest are often the most hidden. Not because they're less important, but because importance isn't measured by attention, it's measured by surrender. Here's what I want you to hear. If you're in a season where it feels like God has chosen everyone but you, where you're faithful but forgotten, present but unseen, you're not being overlooked. You're being selected for something that requires you to be whole before you're public. God is building your identity in private so that when the time comes for you to step into what He's called you to, you're not stepping in as someone who needs the role to feel significant. You're stepping in as someone who already knows she's significant because God said so, and nothing that happens externally can add to or take away from that. That's the woman who can carry influence without it crushing her. That's the woman who can serve without needing credit. That's the woman who can lead without losing herself. And that woman isn't formed on a stage, she's formed in the quiet. So let God do what He's doing. Let Him build you in private. Let Him establish your identity in Him without the distraction of applause, without the pressure of an audience, without the temptation to measure your progress by what other people can see. Because when you finally do step into the fullness of what He's called you to, you won't be stepping in as someone trying to prove she belongs. You'll be stepping in as someone who already knows she does, not because of what she's accomplished, but because of who chose her. And that changes everything. If this is where you are, I want you to know that what's happening in the quiet isn't wasted time. It's the most important time. It's where God is forming in you what no platform ever could, a strength that doesn't need recognition, a purpose that isn't dependent on applause, and an identity that can't be shaken by what the world does or doesn't say about you. If that's what you needed to hear today, consider subscribing, because we're going to keep talking about the kind of faith that's built in the quiet, not the noise. You're not forgotten. You're being formed. And that's the greatest gift God could give you. The problem is that we've been trained to believe that God's favor looks like visibility. That being chosen means being seen. That if God really valued you, He would elevate you in ways that others could witness. We scroll through testimonies of women who got the promotion, the platform, the ministry opportunity, the breakthrough that everyone celebrates, and we measure our own spiritual significance against their public moments. And when our lives don't look like that, when we're still in the same place doing the same things with no spotlight and no applause, we assume something is wrong. We assume we're not chosen. Or worse, that we were chosen but somehow disqualified ourselves. So we start performing. We start trying to make ourselves more visible to God, as if He's overlooking us by accident. We add more to our prayers, more to our service, more hustle to our faith, thinking that if we just do enough, maybe He'll finally notice us the way He seems to notice everyone else. But here's the trap. That belief quietly shifts your identity from being God's daughter to being God's candidate. you stop resting in who you already are to Him.